Anthropic just released a bunch of new features for Claude Cowork, and they are trying to build the ultimate AI assistant. I'm going to share the tips and tricks I wish I knew before I started building with Claude Cowork. And if you watch all the way until the end of the video, you're going to have a huge head start over everyone else just jumping in. There's some things I've been discovering in Cowork that I'm really excited to show you later in the video, but the first tip is knowing when to use Cowork over the basic chat that is in the Claude app. And there are a few main differences you need to know about. Inside of Cowork, you can work inside a folder in your computer. So for example, I just selected the folder No Code MBA Planning. So this is a folder that's on my local computer that now if I send a message to Cowork, it will have access to everything inside of that folder, and it can make changes to files inside of that folder or create new files and put them inside of that folder. This is different from chat, which is just a back and forth chat here inside the app. It doesn't have access to my local machine or any folders. The other main difference is Cowork is much more agentic than chat. With chat, you can send a message and it'll give you a message back. It's more for brainstorming and not as much for actually getting things done and getting tasks done. Cowork is essentially a version of Claude Code. So Claude Code is an agent. It's an agentic system that essentially goes through loops, and it can also spawn sub-agents as well to complete a task, which is different from chat where it's, you send a message, you get a message back. Claude Code and Cowork is going to keep working in loops until it finishes the task that you give it. So I think on a high level, that's how you can think about the difference between Cowork and chat. Chat is for chat back and forth, very straightforward. Cowork is more for getting work completed. So that brings me to my second tip of Claude Cowork, which is that you can connect additional data sources to Cowork. And this is where Cowork gets really powerful. So as you can see here, I have some additional connectors that I've added. You can click Manage Connectors and you can see the connectors that you've added. And then you can, over here, press Browse Connectors and you can see all of the pre-built connector that Claude Cowork has set up. So you can connect to Gmail, for example, if you want it to send emails on your behalf or review your email inbox, things like that. Slack, Figma, Google Calendar. There are so many different types of connectors that you can add inside of Cowork. So I'll show you this connector in action. I'm going to use the Data for SEO connector. This is a data source to access SEO Google search data. So the prompt I'm sending is use data for SEO to do keyword research for No Code MBA. So you can see here it's thinking, and you can actually click on that to see the reasoning that's happening. On the right side, we can see a progress bar of what's happening. It's like a to-do list, context, and then the folder that it's working in here. Cowork will also sometimes ask multiple choice questions to try to understand your query a little bit more. So this is a really short question that I asked it. So it's asking me to clarify. I'm going to say I want a keyword research for SEO for website or blog. And then on the right side, we can see the to-do list. So it says updated to-do list. We can see exactly what it's doing. So we have some transparency here. And then what's nice is if you want, you can go in and ask it to update any of the steps in the to-do list before it gets to it. If you're curious, data for SEO is a really good data source. If you do want to do SEO research, you do have to buy API credits. So you pay for the API credits. So that's something else to consider is when you are connecting to external services, you're paying for that API cost that Claude is using. So we can see how agentic this is. So now it did all these searches. It read the keyword overview data. Now it's building a spreadsheet with all the research data. I didn't even ask it to build a spreadsheet, but it's just doing it because it knows that's going to be helpful given the question that it asked. So you can see it's running code, Python code right now to actually create the file, it looks like. So that brings me to another quick tip, which is really nice. You can add queued messages so you don't have to wait for this response to be finished for you to go and ask it to do something else. So I could send in another message here and say, could you also include the top 10 keywords I should be targeting? So I can send that, and that is now queued to be added next. And I could keep sending more queued messages. I could say, thanks. I can keep sending it and it's going to keep getting added to the queue. The next thing that you should know about is if I click here on the bottom, you can see the model that's being used. So I was using Opus 4.6. This is generally what I like to use if you have the credits on the Claude subscription. If you're on the $100 plan, you have quite a lot of Opus 4.6. A $20 plan, you might run out. Sonnet is still really, really good. So if you're on Sonnet 4.6, you're still going to get really good output. And Haiku, I would use this for simpler tasks that don't need as much reasoning behind it, and they're not as complex. Maybe less steps is how I would think about it. So more capable as Opus, middle is Sonnet, but Sonnet is still really good. I would say just behind Opus. It's not too far behind. And then Haiku is definitely a smaller model that's not able to do quite as much as Sonnet. Okay, so we have our result, and this is what I was mentioning that was cool. Because we added this to our queue, now it also gave us this result. So, okay, cool. It's saying top 10 keywords to target. Here's the keyword, the volume, keyword difficulty, and then why we should do it. And then it's giving me a list here. And I can also click view my keyword research spreadsheet. So here on the right side, we have a preview, which is really nice. And we can also download this file. It's an Excel file, open it in Numbers because I'm on a Mac. It's already saved in the folder. So it saved it in the folder. As I mentioned, we were working on our local machine. So it created this spreadsheet and saved it in the folder. So I'm going to send another prompt and then share another tip that is associated with this. So I'm going to send off this prompt. Great. Can you please write a blog post targeting the top keyword, just to show you what Claude Cowork is capable of and to give you some ideas of how to use it. So it asked me a couple questions, and now it's going to start working on this blog post based on the research that it did. Now, the other thing that's really cool is because this keyword list is now saved in our local computer. Now, if we go back to the homepage, anytime in the future that I am working in this folder, I can ask it to reference that. I could ask it to update that spreadsheet, and we almost have that as like a database that we can use in the future. Now, one thing that is a downside of Cowork right now is that it is all local on your computer. So this isn't, saved in the cloud. You can't use it on other computers. You can't access that from your phone. So there are some limitations to that as well that you should be aware of. There are some ways to potentially get around that. You could connect to like GitHub, for example, and almost commit things to GitHub the way that, with code, you can commit things to GitHub, so you could kind of have a knowledge base in that way. There are other ways to get around that, but that is something that you should be aware of. But what I wanted to show you is you can have that active task, and then we can have another task right on top of it. So while that other task of writing the blog post is happening, we can go and have more tasks running in parallel. You can have as many tasks as you want running at the same time. If we go back to the homepage, we can see now there are 2 tasks happening at once, which is really cool to see. And this is another area where I think Cowork becomes really powerful when you start having to do multiple tasks at once. And then as the human, you're observing these tasks and orchestrating it all. So here we can see, just as an example, write an X article about the best practices of using Claude Cowork. So again, it's using web search. On the right side, we can see the context that it's using. And I'll show you the result of this in a second, and we'll see together what we think the quality of the output is. But I'm going to move on to the next tip, which are scheduled tasks. So this is a newer feature from Claude Cowork. I think it's trying to catch up a little bit to what tools like OpenClaw have, where you can schedule tasks to run on your behalf. To do this in Cowork, all you have to do is do the / command and then start typing schedule. Once you do that, you can then create a scheduled task that can be run on demand or automatically on an interval. So a scheduled task that I created just as a test like last week was a scheduled task for daily AI news. So it runs every day. And if you click on it, you can see all the information about that scheduled task. So we can see when it's happening, the instructions for that scheduled task. You can go in and directly edit the prompt if you want. The model you can select as well. You can also select a folder to work in and the frequency. And then you can even run it now just to test it. But if we go back to scheduled tasks, you can see all the scheduled tasks that you have. Now, again, this is a downside to the way Claude Cowork is right now, is that it only runs while your computer is awake, because this is all running locally on your machine. That is a difference from chat, which is all running in the cloud. That's why you can use Claude Chat from your phone or your computer, but Cowork is all locally on your computer right now. So you would have to have a desktop computer that's always running Claude Cowork for tasks to run all the time, overnight, for example. And that's why if we click here, we can see there's days that it's skipped. I can probably see the days that I was awake and on my computer at 7 a.m. and then the days that I wasn't. So that's just something that you should be aware of with scheduled tasks right now with Cowork. The next tip that you should be aware of with Cowork, and this actually applies to Claude Chat as well, and Claude Code are skills. So this is something that's across the whole ecosystem. So just to show you here, a couple skills that I tested out that are currently on. So one is Old English copywriting. So this is just a skill. I use the Claude skill creator. You can ask it in the chat to say, hey, I want to create a skill. And then it'll basically ask you some questions and then create the skill. Skills are essentially just files of text telling the AI what to do. So it's like context that gets loaded into the AI chat. Here we can see the skill both in code. So you can see it's all marked down basically, or you can view it in the preview tab, which is a little bit nicer. And this is just telling the AI how to convert from modern English to Old English. And we can, at any point and I'll even show you how this works in a second, where we can take the blog post and say, hey, use this skill to do Old English copywriting, and it'll update it. YouTube hooks, this is one I use a lot more. This is helping me when I'm creating YouTube videos to create strong hooks for the video. So things I can do with some examples. And I use this to improve the YouTube videos that I create. And I know we got a little bit off track of actually scheduling a task, so I'll do that in a second. But the way skills work is if I say, I'm making a YouTube video and need help on some hooks, the video is about Claude Cowork. So I can put that in and hear what we're going to see. And again, I'm going to go back to schedule tasks in just a second. We can see it's running the skill and it found that skill YouTube hook. So basically, every time you send a message in Cowork, chat, or code, the AI is going to have a list of all of the skills that you have. And then if it decides it's relevant, it's going to pull those in. So I'm not going to finish running this, but that's just to show you how it works and how skills can be brought in. And also multiple skills can be loaded up for one message. So you're not limited to just one skill. So that's what makes it so powerful and what makes it even more powerful than like projects, for example, in Claude Code, which they're kind of moving away from. Projects are like, you can have a YouTube project, which would have that context, but it's a skill. It can be used anywhere based on the intelligence of the AI when it wants to bring it in. So one more, I'll just again show you an example. And then in a second, we're going to jump into the blog post that we had Claude write, because I think it's finished. But I want to show you how this schedule feature works. So if I send this off, I want to schedule a weekly task to look at AI trends and come up with YouTube video ideas. So it's going to think about what to do. It's going to ask us when to run it. I can say Friday at 8 a.m. Now we can see it's creating a scheduled task. And now it is done and we have the schedule set up and we can manually check it out in the scheduled tab as well. So the blog post is finished before publishing. It's saying just enter in the correct YouTube tutorial links, fill in the related articles links. Now, those are things that if we gave it more information about, right now it's not connected to connectors that would give it that information about my current YouTube tutorials or my current related articles, but we could do that and then it could, be even more powerful. Here we can see it wrote this really nice article. It's linking tutorials for all the tools, which is really cool. So the keyword to target was vibe coding tools, best AI app builder, vibe coding tutorial, vibe coding app. So it used the research to actually create this blog post. The level of quality of these types of posts is just so much higher than it was like a year ago, especially being able to integrate keyword research really easily. So I told you I would experiment with this, write this in Old English. So we can see it knew that we had that skill. So it's going to run that skill. And the idea behind skills is just to give it more specific knowledge about what you want to do. Now, of course, I could have just had this prompt and the AI would, update it to Old English, but they're very specific ways that skill of updating text to Old English from modern English to Old English is written. And that's going to give the AI more custom knowledge to what, I as the user would want. So that's how you should think about skills. Of course, the YouTube hook skill as well that we talked about earlier, I could just have the Claude model give me ideas. But by giving it that skill with examples and feedback from me as the human, I'm going to get a result that is more specific to exactly what I want. And then the last tip you should know about, so there's certain plugins. So here I have an Apollo plugin, for example, which is basically a lead database, and then you can send cold emails from it. So if I click load, find qualified leads, for example, there's certain slash commands that are connected to the plugins that you have. So here we can see if I do slash prospect, it's pulling that in from Apollo. So you'll find with different plugins that you have that some of that could happen. So here you can see I have Apollo, and if you click manage plugins, we can browse plugins as well and connect additional plugins with specific ready-to-use workflows. So that's what that slash command is like a ready-to-use workflow is a good way to put it. So we have a result here in the Old English. And again, this is just an example to show you kind of what's possible. You can pause the video and read this. I think it's pretty funny and actually pretty good. I mean, it wouldn't be something that I think Google would actually rank, but maybe it would because people would be interested and actually want to read it. So yeah, who knows? Probably not, and more of just a fun experiment. But again, feel free to pause the video and let me know in the comments what you think, if there's any funny lines here. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments if there's anything else you want me to go over with Cowork or the Claude ecosystem or any other AI or vibe coding or no code tools. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get more free content like this. Things are changing so quickly in the AI world. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.